Luther League of America met for the first time as a national organization in October of 1895 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Prior to this, local groups were meeting on an independent or district basis. Because there were no other national Lutheran youth organizations, it was not uncommon for local groups with many different synods to affiliate themselves with the Luther League of America, which was a branch of the United Lutheran Church of America. As the individual synods grew to realize the importance of their youth in the life of the church, more and more synods developed their own youth programs, and the tie to the Luther League of America weakened. But most groups retained the Luther League name. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Lutheran churches were closely tied to the cultures of various Northern European immigrant groups. Communities of Norwegians, Danes, Germans, Swedes, and Finns clung to and attempted to preserve what they could of their native culture in a new country. Even speaking English presented a threat to this. In the 20s and 30s, there was an increased movement for the church to become American. The American Lutheran Church today is the product of the merger in 1960 of 3 Lutheran bodies and the addition of another in 1963. The synods involved in this merger were the predominantly German American Lutheran Church, ELC, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, or ELC, which was a combination of several smaller Norwegian synods, the Danish United Evangelical Lutheran Church, UELC, and the Lutheran Free Church, LFC, another Norwegian synod. The old ALC itself was the result of the merger of 3 German synods in 1930. The young people's groups which came together were the General Luther League of the Joint Ohio Synod, the Luther League of the Buffalo Synod, and the Wartburg League of the Iowa Synod, which included the previous Texas Luther League. Iowa Synod's Wartburg League established a special fund in 1916, and in 1923 unveiled the statue of Martin Luther, which still stands in the courtyard of Wartburg Seminary in Dubuque. Between 1930 and 1960, the Luther League of the ALC met in convention 14 times, usually every 2 years, with some disruption of the schedule during World War II. A common feature of the biennial Luther League conventions was a parade of districts, complete with floats. The last convention of the old ALC was at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York in 1958. The first national convention of the Young People's Luther League was in Red Wing, Minnesota in 1919, 2 years after the merger which formed the ELC. Conventions were generally every 2 years, with a 6-year break during World War II. In 1922, the Young People's Luther League became international when the Canadian Luther League joined the auxiliary. The Seattle Convention in June of 1927 is one of the few Luther League conventions of the early 1900s which was documented with photos.
Sunday Night Luther League in the mid-40s was as much a part of Sunday as the morning worship service. Some of the friends that were made at that time are still some of my closest. It was really an enriching experience.
The UELC was the smallest synod involved in the formation of the ALC. Despite its small size, the Danish Church had a strong record for youth work, first through the Central Committee of the Danish United Young People's Leagues, established in 1918, and then in 1935 with the organization of a National Luther League. The Luther League Federation of the Lutheran Free Church started out as the Young People's Federation in 1920. The name change came in 1937 when the Federation expanded to include all local leagues in the Synod, not just the original 50 leagues in the founding group of 1920. For many years, the Synod was small enough to allow annual conventions. From 1946 to 1954, the site was Medicine Lake, Minnesota. 1985 marks more than just the 90th anniversary of Luther League. It's also the 25th anniversary of the Luther League of the ALC. The constituting convention was held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in August of 1960. The first national convention of the Luther League of the ALC was 1 year later in Miami Beach, Florida.
Something very special happened at that convention in that Martin Luther King was one of the main speakers. And that convention signaled a turn in Luther League toward the world, toward the concerns of the world, and toward concerns of justice.
At this time, Luther League officers were commonly college and seminary students. Later in the 60s, constitutional changes placed youth leadership in the hands of high school youth, a strong tradition which continues to this day. In 1964, less than a year after the death of President John F. Kennedy, the Luther League's convention agenda included speakers Louis Lomax, another civil rights activist. The theme was Jesus is Lord.
At that convention, the city became the center of our concern. I recall that the offering from that convention was given then to a new ministry in Chicago called the Urban Training Center for Christian Mission. That kind of emphasis toward the city, toward the concerns for justice and peace and civil rights became a major part of what the League was about in those years.
Something new was tried in 1967. Two simultaneous conventions were held in Dallas, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. The events shared everything from the theme to the backdrop to the speakers. Protests against the Vietnam War were at a peak, and the 1967 convention featured, among other events, a special Vietnam service. The League returned to a single-site convention in 1970, when it met in New York at Madison Square Garden. Special guests included George McGovern and singer-activist environmentalist Pete Seeger, addressing the theme, "And We Say We Care."
It was breathtaking for me that first night that we walked into Madison Square Gardens to see all those young people there who had also planned and worked hard to be in the same place. The issues of the 70s were heavy ones, and the young people made lots of decisions that affected the church and a big part of what Luther League is today.
1973 provided the first opportunity to attend an all-Lutheran youth gathering at the Astrodome in Houston. Special guests included Johnny Cash and Chris Christopherson. For All the Saints was an all-Lutheran youth and adult gathering which saw 26,300 participants flock to the Superdome in New Orleans. Baptism was the focus for the event, which culminated in the baptism of the youngest person present, a newborn baby. After the New Orleans experience, the three synods decided to go with their own gatherings. In 1979, the ALC's Called to be Servants was taken to Kansas City, Missouri. The City of Fountains was the site of a special pilgrimage through the city streets, and the presentation by the Reverend Jesse Jackson was a major highlight. The San Antonio gathering, In Christ a New Creation, broke attendance records for the Luther League. More than 15,000 young people and their counselors traveled to the Texas event, and attendance at the delegates' convention reached 900. The schedule was expanded to include special events each night of the gathering, including a fiesta in the city's old village, La Villita. After 90 years, the Luther League is not only alive and well, it's a source of energy and vitality for the church. Youth are not only the church of tomorrow, but also members and leaders in the church today. Ironically, the Luther League of America was not so fortunate. The Lutheran Church in America, the later parent synod of the Luther League of America, disbanded its youth organization in the 60s. Only time will tell the future of the Luther League and the new Lutheran Church. In the meantime, here's to 90 years more.